Welcome to the Nuggets Inc. podcast. I am Bennett Durando, and I'm doing my best Matt Schubert impersonation there on that introduction. We are finally back. We apologize for the hiatus. Matt left the paper, as I'm sure you knew. He has moved on to other pastures. Greener, who's to say? But he's no longer at the Denver Post. Fired, just a tremendous fall from grace. And we're trying to get the pod back up and going a little bit more frequently. Right now, that might be more of a revolving door of guests, kind of coming on and chopping it up about the Nuggets with me. I'm your Denver Post Nuggets beat writer, for those who are new to the show. But it's been a crazy season, and there's been a lot that we've kind of missed that just happened to be in this window where Matt left, and it's a shame because I just haven't been in front of a microphone much. But Nikola Jokic got hurt. Everyone else got hurt. The Nuggets went a month without their three-time MVP. Was the longest consecutive absence of his professional basketball career, and they went 10-6 without him. They were in third place in the Western Conference standings when he went down. Everyone kind of starts gaming it out, saying, okay, if he's back in 4 weeks, how far have they fallen in the standings? What if it's 6 weeks? Are they in the play-in now with Jokic coming back and they're trying to make up ground? No, they managed to stay in third place over the course of a month. They never dropped lower than fourth. They pull off some absolutely memorable wins. The one in Philadelphia, I think, hands down, probably the game of the season for them so far, at least from a positive standpoint. Being without their entire rotation pretty much, Jalen Pickett, Zeke Naji, Hunter Tyson, all coming through for an overtime win over Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey and the Sixers. Jalen Pickett, iconic quote after the game, I was giving MVPs buckets out there. So the Nuggets are riding high on this confidence. In January, they get Jokic back. They get Valanciunas back. They were playing a few weeks without a center at all. And what happens? They are 5-8 since Jokic came back, and now they have slid in the standings down to fifth place after a loss to Minnesota last Sunday. It's the first time they've been in fifth since November 2nd. So basically, they had gone the entirety of the regular season since the first week, hanging on to a top four spot, which obviously means home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs, only to slip to fifth with Jokic back in the lineup. He hasn't been quite himself. He's not shooting the three ball very well. Efficiency is down. Turnovers are up. On the other hand, the Nuggets played really well with Jokic in the lineup in a couple of pivotal games against OKC and Minnesota over the weekend. They lose both because they were outscored by a combined 34 points in 17 minutes with him off the floor. And what does that mean? The non-Jokic minutes, even though they survived a month of non-Jokic minutes, are now back, it seems like. They are trying to navigate what are the right lineups. How are they going to handle this in the playoffs? Who staggers? Is it Jamal Murray all the time? Do they have to go to Aaron Gordon at the 5? Can Jonas Valanciunas hang against smaller lineups? There's a lot of questions there that they're going to have to handle going forward. In the meantime, some drama has taken place as well. We saw sort of a rivalry escalation of Nuggets versus Thunder last Friday. Lou Dort kind of hip checks and also sticks out the right leg to trip Nikola Jokic while he's jogging up the court, not with the ball. Jokic with a fury that I have not seen since I have covered him. Aaron, would you say, I mean, we've got Aaron Ontiveros here. I should have introduced him already. Legendary producer, photographer. He photographed the aftermath of the Markieff Morris incident. You're a fan of seeing Jokic in this capacity, right? What did it inspire in you emotionally, seeing Jokic react like that?
I like seeing vintage Jokic.
Vintage Jokic.
Yeah, I think so. He was a little angrier at some point in his career. He reeled it
Just
in.
when he was an angry young man in general. Now he's in his 30s. He's a father. That's what you're sort of talking about.
Yeah, I think he's matured a little. His brothers aren't beating people up in the stands. One brother in particular, I guess. Yeah, I think the last time I saw that actual look on his face is he ended the Markieff Morris thing pretty quickly.
He did.
It didn't take much.
And it was kind of a similar play that provoked it a little bit, like a from the side sort of thing while he's coming up the court.
Yeah, and I think he was right to react in those situations. Another one I saw where he actually had that look in his eyes was against the Suns in an elimination game where he was ejected. He slapped the ball from Campaign's hands. Devin Booker was quick to jump in. Jokic got that same look on his face, hands down at his side as he's wont to do, and said, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?"
That's good stuff. We're going to talk a lot about Jokic, his reaction to that, his recent play, the kind of backwards element of them struggling right now with him back in the lineup with the one and only Tim MacMahon from ESPN. He's our guest. A great conversation sort of about the Nuggets at large, but definitely a lot of Jokic talk and Jokic v. Thunder talk in that conversation coming up. But we're going to try to record a little bit more regularly, bring in some guests. There's a lot of ire, it seems like, in the fan base with David Adelman right now. We might bring someone in, do an episode, talk Adelman and kind of the season that he's had as a new head coach in the league in the next week or two. In the meantime, please enjoy our conversation with Tim, and welcome back to the Nuggets Inc. podcast. And we are back. It is the Nuggets Inc. podcast here from the Denver Post studios. I am Bennett Durando, your host, here with Aaron Ontiveros and a special guest over the phone, Tim MacMahon of ESPN, the Hoop Collective, a frequenter of the Tipsy Tiki in Bricktown, OKC. Am I missing anything? Author of The Wonder Boy.
No, you've done a pretty good job. Went down the whole, at least the high points of the resume. Howdy, partners. How you doing?
Howdy, partners. Tim, you're we wanted to have you on in particular because you were in OKC, as was I, for the Nuggets Thunder game last Friday, which was a particularly memorable game as far as regular season showdowns between contenders, or possible contenders at least. And we just wanted to talk a little, maybe a little big picture Nuggets, but kind of start with that game because it felt like there was a key moment as far as sort of the direction of the Nuggets-Thunder rivalry, if you can call it that, between Nikola Jokic and Dort. And I don't know, it felt like to me, it felt like there was more staying power with this confrontation than a lot of these sort of kerfuffles have in the NBA for a variety of reasons, among them because of sort of Jokic's sort of memorable face that got screen grabbed and went around online, I think. But on top of that, just because the context between these two teams, having had a 7-game playoff series last year, kind of being regarded as the two alphas in the West, although I think one of the two has separated itself more so. Just curious, like what was your perspective on that night and that encounter, and kind of seeing a side of Jokic that we don't get to see super often?
Yeah, and a side that we have seen before. Obviously, there was the infamous thing with the what ended up being the Morris brothers, which is when the world first really got a full introduction to the Jokic brothers. But look, there's no question it's a rivalry. It was a fierce 7-game series last year. Obviously, it ended with a whimper, but the Nuggets were like the hurdle that the Thunder had to get over to be a championship team, and the Nuggets pushed OKC to the brink there. I think there is a lot of respect between these teams, but there's also animosity. They don't like each other, and OKC is a team that you constantly hear opponents complaining about how, not just how physical they are, but the complaint that you hear a lot is that the officials let OKC take liberties from a physical defensive perspective that should be whistles, should be fouls. Joker obviously felt like, because it wasn't like there was something that, oh my gosh, where'd that come from in the fourth quarter? There was a lot of wrestling. There was a lot of, there were many heated moments throughout the game. There was, repeated times that Joker got tangled up, or there was playing, like bumper derby out there. Some of the times he got tangled up with Dort on many cases. I think they felt like Joker was taking some, liberties with elbows and forearms and whatnot. And the simple fact of the matter is, Lou Dort took a blatant, dirty shot at him. I mean, to use the words of David Adelman, it was malicious. It was a cheap shot. I don't see any way you could argue against that. Certainly, given an opportunity to respond to David Adelman's comments a couple days later, Mark Dagenot chose not to. He basically, instead of answering a very direct question, talked about how much respect that the Thunder have for the Nuggets. And
I think the word respect was in that quote 8 times, maybe
exactly
in 6 sentences.
And it was his way of saying, hey, I'm not going to get in the back and forth. But also, like, if he felt like what Lou did was defensible, he would have defended it in that moment. Obviously, the Nuggets thought that he was out of line, being as defensive about it as he was in the immediate aftermath post-game. That was part of it. And I don't think Lou Dort is a dirty player. I think that was a dirty moment. There's no question. He put it in reverse, went to hip check, and then stuck his foot out to trip him. Like, there's no way you can do anything but look at that and say, okay, he wanted to take a shot at Joker. So that moment, certainly, if there was any question that this was a real deal rivalry, that was eliminated right then and there. And I'll see you back in OKC on March 9th. I'm looking forward to it.
It's amazing that there happens to be another one 10 days later. Thank you to the NBA scheduling gods for that one, I guess. I thought it was notable. The Dort specific element of it felt important. It made me think of a quote from Bruce Brown earlier in this season, where he was trying to identify some sort of identity that the Nuggets would want to have defensively this year, which has been a struggle for them year over year. And he said later in the season, they'll let things go just because they know you're a physical defender. Lou Dort has a reputation as being a physical defender, so they don't really call much on him. So I'm just trying to do that. He said Lou Dort unprompted in this comment, and it traces really a season-long pattern of Nuggets comments kind of alluding to OKC as this defensive style pushing the boundaries that they almost have wanted to emulate and have failed to do so pretty dramatically. But anyway, the fact that Lou Dort, kind of is the front man of that specific aspect of OKC's reputation is relevant in how Jokic reacted to the play too, I think.
Well, and it's funny because, yes, they want to emulate it, and they're complaining about it.
And they're complaining about it. Yeah, exactly.
And look, this is not like the Nuggets are not alone here. I mean, Chris Finch has famously had repeated comments about feeling like SGA gets a favorable whistle, and then on the other end, they get away with, playing football or playing hockey, or I guess if it's Lou Dort as a Canadian. Finch got tossed out of that game early this season, early in the first quarter, which it felt like that was a calculated decision that he made, that, okay, the first opportunity, I'm going to make my point here. And, find me an elite defensive team that isn't physical. And it's not just Lou Dort. Like, Alex Caruso is absolutely one of the most physical defenders in the league. How else is a 6'5", 195-pound guy going to guard a 7-foot, 3-time MVP in a Game 7? You know what I mean? Both Jalen Williams, J. Will and J. Dub, very physical. Case and Wallace, who might honestly be their best on-ball defender. Same with him. Chet's about as physical as a 7-foot, 165-pound guy can be. But again, you're not going to be by far the best defensive team in the league without, being, I think Joe could put it, handsy, chippy, on edge. That's just their style of play. Now, having said all that, this deal with Dort, that's not physical play, right? That's
For
not.
sure.
That was a completely different. That was a cheap shot. It was, and I think Lou. As we speak now, I don't believe he's talked to the media since then. I don't think he's been asked about it. But I think he would admit, like, hey, I got heated, and that probably wasn't my best moment. Also, I don't think Lou did any service to himself there, because when you make plays like that, or it's not even a play, when you do things like that, you do get a reputation. And, you don't want refs to go in, because I tell you, refs follow the league. Like, refs, they all follow the league. They watch games, they watch shows, they have social media. Like, these guys are basketball fans first and foremost. And if you get a reputation for being a dirty player, that does precede you. And also down the road, if there's anything that's kind of borderline in the eyes of the league office, this is like, dude, you lose benefit of the doubt in the future by doing something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he had the benefit of the doubt with Jokic. Obviously, the quote afterwards, an unnecessary move and a necessary reaction by me, kind of said a lot there, because, I wasn't exactly sure how he was going to handle it post game. So, and I'll say this, one of the most interesting things about, the upcoming rematch, and, if there's a playoff series at some point that I'm interested to watch, is the Jokic Jalen Williams element of it now, just because they, when Williams is on the court, he's going to be matched up against Jokic a lot. They are constantly grappling for space with each other. That might have been the most physical aspect of that game for 4 quarters leading up to the Dort incident. Just that Jokic trying to plant at the elbow, Williams kind of pushing him off of a spot, them shoving at each other a little bit. I think they had to get separated before an inbound at one point. So a lot of that was going on before, obviously, Williams comes to the defense of Dort in the middle of that fight, if you want to call it that. So that's going to be a fun element of it that I'm looking forward to as well. But,
yeah, and listen, Jalen Williams is basically their third big, so he ain't coming in there concerned about foul trouble. If he gets a couple quick whistles, so be it. He's there. He's a skilled player. Like, he's a pretty skilled passer, shooter, those kind of things. But he's coming into the game against the Denver Nuggets to get some body blows in on Joker. And I don't mean that in a bad sense, but like, when you deal with that kind of a superstar, especially a guy who can be so physically dominant in the sense of getting the ball where he wants to and just kind of bullying you to the basket, bullying you to his spots. Like, you want to, there's some wear and tear that you want to put on him throughout the course of a game and throughout the course of the playoff series. And that's Jalen Williams' role. And I thought that, because Joker did shake hands with some guys post game. I kind of felt bad for Nikola Jokic. This guy, he's a Serbian kid. He's, unfortunately, because of the knee last year and the cancer this year that he had to beat, he's only played in, I don't know, a handful of NBA games. But Joker comes over to shake your hand post game as a Serbian kid. You're absolutely going to shake your hand and shake his hand and smile and all that. He shook a few different Thunder players' hands though. I thought he had a brief little dap with Jalen Williams. I asked Jay Will about that. He made it clear, oh, no, there was no post-game interaction between us, just to be clear.
Yeah. It's funny. Afterward, I asked Jokic about still staying out to shake hands with everyone, and I had not realized that Jalen Williams was maybe the one hand that either he didn't get around to or they didn't get around to each other. Clearly,
they walked right by each other, because I thought there was a brief dap. They walked. Put it this way: if they didn't have to extend their arms fully to dap each other if they wanted to.
Yeah.
I'll put it like that.
No, definitely. So yeah, I hadn't realized that was an act of mutual avoidance right there when I was asking him about that in the locker room post game. But he gave me a little look. The you're an idiot for asking that look. So in hindsight, and probably fair.
I got a couple of those looks from Joker post game as well. And one was the temperature check on how he's feeling physically.
Mm-hmm.
Really good, quickly, dismissively. And I understand that's kind of his stock answer. It's, I think I said the other day, my Serbian's not very good, but I think that translates to I don't want to talk about it in Serbian. And then the other thing was when I asked him about his frustration building throughout the course of the game, he didn't like that. But, I mean, David Adelman had just talked about how he felt that Joker's frustration was building. He focused specifically on the whistle. The game's officiated differently on the perimeter than it is in the paint. Basically saying, hey, our guys getting the crap beat out of them on a regular basis. Yeah, there's going to be some frustration there. I got a C in a community college psychology course way back when. But based on what I learned there and what I've learned watching the NBA over the years, I also think Joker's frustrated that he's not playing at his normal, historically dominant level. And I do think that gets back to the first thing about the guy's not right physically right now. And, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of people around there. It's not so much the knee as it is this wrist that's been off and on throughout the years. But, it's been something that's really been bothering him. And like when there's a 12-game span where the Nuggets are 4-8 and Joker shoots below 50% from the floor in half those games, that's shocking.
Yep.
This is a
especially
guy
poorly from three too.
Well, poorly from three, and just this is the guy who I've never seen anybody with as good of paint touch as Joker. I think he's got the best touch in the paint in NBA history. He shoots like a rim runner percentage in the paint on a bunch of like tough hooks and those little floaters and just those beautiful touch shots. And he hasn't been nearly at that level really since he's gotten back from the knee injury. And, listen, the number one reason the Nuggets are still perceived to be contenders is because they have a guy who arguably is and can certainly be the most dominant force in the NBA, but they need Joker playing at that level. And it's crazy. A guy can go, I'm estimating numbers here, I don't have them right in front of me, but he can go for a stretch here and be like 26 points, 14 rebounds, 9 assists. And you're like, yeah.
And it's a bad game. Yeah.
he's slumping right now. But by his ridiculously high standards for efficiency, Joker is not himself lately. And my understanding, you're not going to get him to admit it, but talking to other people, is the wrist has really been an issue.
Yeah. So, and this is a good, sort of big picture segue into the state of their health in general too. But with the wrist, it goes back several years. Jokic's own estimation on it is about 6 years. It's something that has bothered him off and on, will kind of pop up randomly if he gets hit. It'll bother him for a few weeks, then it might go away. Or sometimes it might linger longer. I think it was bothering him during the Olympics in 2024, if you remember, when he was awfully dominant for Serbia, but could not make a three, and was kind of dealing with the wrist throughout that offseason coming off of the loss to the Timberwolves, where he also was not able to make a lot of threes against the drop coverage that Minnesota plays a lot. So you have this wrist thing going on. He comes back from the All-Star break. He's got it taped up, their first game in LA. He shoots poorly. The next night they play in Portland. It is not taped up anymore. He has a pretty good game. Everyone has a good game. They won by 54. And it was not that the pain was gone. It was that he decided that the tape was basically it was preventing him from feeling anything, including the ball. So he didn't have a good feel for his shot, for the touch, or anything like that. And he basically decided it would be better to at least be irritated by it and feel a little more pain as opposed to feeling numb. And so he hasn't had the tape on since then, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been bothering him.
And he had a ton of turnovers in that first game back too, if I recall correctly.
He did. Mm-hmm. He's had a lot of turnovers in general recently.
Yeah, and talking to people who saw him over All-Star Weekend, people with other teams are like, dude, every time we saw him away from the floor, he had a brace on or he's icing that wrist. And again, the guy, the other night, I think he was 15 of 26, and, so it's 57% from the floor. Even that is it's an off night for Joker.
Mm-hmm.
And am I holding him to an unbelievably high standard? Yes, because that is the guy that he has been over the years. This is as efficient a high volume scorer as we have ever seen. And, you're just used to this guy's, scoring 28, 30 on 60 plus % from the floor with a triple double. That's just you're used to seeing him play at that level. And he's been good since the break, but he has not been, 3-time MVP good. I do think the odds of him being MVP have dropped drastically, and it's not just the injury, but more so I think the losing coming out of the break is really given his chances there.
When you contrast the team's success while he was out with the slump that they've gone into since he returned, like it's kind of hard to make a super solid case for him based on those two things alone.
Yeah, and especially when you've got SGA doing what he's doing. And then I honestly think right now Joker's still second of the odds, but like if San Antonio ends up as the number one seed in the West, which is still a possibility, that's going to be a heck of a case for Wemby. And, Cade is going to have the case that the Pistons are either the number one seed in the East or maybe even the number one overall seed. So, listen, Joker's still putting up damn near 30-point triple-double on average, but I don't think this is going to be his fourth MVP year. And I think the question is, can he manage this wrist well enough to where, he can have a dominant playoff run that they need for it to be a deep playoff run? And then are they going to be able to get any kind of rhythm with the other guys coming back and, hopefully be able to get Aaron Gordon back and keep him healthy, which has obviously been a major issue, and then get Peyton Watson back and hopefully get him back to playing like he was before when Peyton Watson has had a breakout season.
Yeah. No, I mean, his emergence as a ball in hand guy who can create a shot for himself and for others pretty efficiently in January, one of the key, defining variables in them going 10-6 without Jokic while he's out with the knee injury for a month. So obviously Watson is important. I would say most important toward their defense, which has obviously just been, bottom 10 is just not good enough to win a championship. That is what history says. But when they have everyone healthy, this gets at sort of a precarious concept. Like I'm sure you hear the same thing from, Nuggets people that you talk to, which is they still have a lot of confidence that if they're healthy, they are just as good, if not better, than OKC, than San Antonio, than some of these other teams that they could be seeing in a 7-game series. It's been since November 12th since they've been fully healthy. That it starts to become a lot to expect them to be fully healthy for 2 straight months, I think, when we've seen them go through as much of the season as they have without having everyone. And Aaron Gordon is obviously central to this because he, I think he feels pretty good right now. He feels like he can play, and this is kind of the constant tug of war between his enthusiasm and eagerness to play, especially when he sees the team in a slump and wants to help them out of it, versus the Nuggets kind of feeling a little inclined to bubble wrap them if they can until when it's really most important. So, you kind of have those two dueling elements of it here, but they also need to probably at least get him a few games to feel like there's enough of a rhythm again with certain lineups and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and they want to be able to establish some kind of rhythm and chemistry and all that kind of stuff going into the playoffs. As they're hoping to get AG back and Watson back very soon here. What are they saying about Cam Johnson? I've not checked in on that since he left the other night.
Well, so were you in the locker room that much, or you were kind of bouncing back and forth, I guess?
I was bouncing back and forth. So I didn't talk to Cam after the night in OKC. Then I know he left the next game and didn't play in Utah.
So Cam, he looked as dejected as I've seen anyone by a regular season loss in a locker room since I've covered the team.
And obviously he had a chance to hit the game winner, didn't go down.
I would say in general, he kind of struggled to hang with some of the physicality of the game in general. And I don't know if you can name 3 or 4 plays where you really remember him making an impact throughout the game. And then you compound that with a pretty clean look from the corner to possibly win it at the end of regulation. And obviously he felt like he let his teammates down, himself down, maybe Jokic down after an emotional fourth quarter. And then Sunday, Minnesota, another national TV game, another critical game in the standings with, or I don't know how many rivals a team is allowed to have, but I've always since I've covered them, I've thought of Minnesota as sort of their primary rival.
Oh, yeah.
But
a couple playoff series, that'll do it.
He comes off of this missed shot and he plays easily his worst game as a Nugget. He puts up a goose egg. He's a -13. I think everyone else in the starting lineup was a -3 or better. So noticeably, just not having any sort of impact. They've been trying to sort of use him as this stagger with the second unit. That went poorly. David Adelman basically vows after the game to explore other options. He felt like he needed to have Murray or Jokic on the court at all times, which is something that he actually doesn't prefer to do, usually if they can survive a few minutes without both. So some waning trust, it feels like, in Cam Johnson after that. On the other hand, it's such a weird season to evaluate because he's still, I don't have the number in front of me, but I think he's still 42% from three or something like that.
Yeah, I looked at that the other day and I was like, wow, he shot it better because he got off to such a slow start.
Yeah.
And look, like the Joker Jokic thing, having to have one or the other on the floor, maybe that changes if you get Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson back. Two guys who, they're not guards, but Watson's obviously shown the ability to create off the dribble this year. Gordon's always had that playmaking ability. I mean, it seems forever ago, but Gordon in Orlando, they weren't good teams, but he was the number one guy offensively on those teams. And then I wonder, who's starting if they are fully healthy? Is Peyton Watson starting over Cam Johnson?
I don't think he is. That's
interesting.
Anything can change. Obviously, Cam Johnson is coming off of a really bad pair of games, and he's got a little bit of an ankle thing on top of that.
Right.
But I think that they would prefer to ride with their starting lineup that started the season 8-2, and part of the Cam arc of the season that's been so interesting is that slump that you referred to at the beginning of the year. The offense was immaculate despite him shooting poorly for those first few games. And before the injuries really started to get to this team, it wasn't like he was a detriment to what they were doing. And their defense was in fact pretty good for those 2 to 3 weeks as well. So you have all of this together, and I kind of think they've been reaching to get back to this point where they can see if that was real, especially defensively. But with Cam,
and defensively, it's with Aaron Gordon. Last I checked, that defense rating
it's way better
in the league.
Yeah,
and without him, it's like 27.
Yeah, I think it's like 8 points per 100 better with Gordon on the floor. So it's a massive difference. But with Cam, it's he's clearly a guy whose confidence is a bit shaken right now, and he is trying to work through that. Is benching him really the solution? You need him for a playoff run. You need bodies who can make open shots with the way that teams sort of over-index on the two-man game with Jokic and Murray. So, I don't know if that's going to help you in the long run to say, just based on performance alone for a certain stretch, we're going to go with Peyton Watson at the 3 and bring Cam off the bench. But
it's interesting.
What's interesting is what kind of worked early in the season is Adelman moved him into that stagger with the second unit 2 or 3 weeks in after he was struggling. And the idea behind that was basically, let's get this guy the ball a little bit more. He's kind of been struggling to find his place, be involved in the offense when Jokic and Murray are out there. Let's let him kind of run a lineup on his own. Let him create off the dribble a tiny bit, do some DHOs with Jonas Valanciunas, get some confidence, get settled in, and it really worked. And he shot 50 from 3 over about a month stretch before he got hurt. So, which leads back to now, because once he got back from his injury, that's why Adelman wanted to stagger him again, was to kind of ease him back into that role. But it speaks to the point you're raising, because what worked for Cam Johnson then, when he was in a slump, was kind of empowering him a little bit more. And I kind of think that's how they would probably operate right here. I get the sense that Peyton Watson will still be coming off the bench, but they want to use him a little bit in more of a centerpiece role when he's on the floor if they can, that sort of stuff. But who knows? Maybe this gets so bad with Cam Johnson right now that they do feel like they have to start Peyton.
Well, and this is another conversation for months down the road, but Peyton Watson or Cam Johnson might be a decision that they have to make this summer. They're not just going to be able to pay Peyton Watson and keep everybody on the roster. And you start looking at salary slots, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, and trust me, rival front offices have figured out that, okay, if they're going to keep Peyton Watson, they're going to have to move somebody else. And, Cam Johnson is one of two guys, well, maybe three, with salaries that would, that would fit into that math of what they've got to move.
You're throwing Gordon in there too with Johnson and Brown.
And just to be clear, I personally would be very surprised if Aaron Gordon were part of it. But just if you're looking at it from a mathematics standpoint, I do think that for the same reasons we're talking about how critical it is to get Gordon healthy, I just think Gordon is such a part of the fabric of this that I would be very surprised if he were to move. I think honestly, Cam Johnson would be the obvious guy if that's the route you're going to go, because Brown is a homegrown ascending player who, can be part of this thing for a long time to come. But we'll see, and we'll see how things play out. I think certainly Peyton Watson has played well enough to have established himself as a guy who's going to be one of the premier dudes in free agency. It's restricted free agency, but, the Nuggets obviously have some restraints in terms of they're not just going to blow through aprons and not just going to pay dozens and dozens and dozens of millions of dollars in luxury tax. There's going to have to be a financial decision made on what their roster looks like moving forward.
Yeah, no, they owe Christian Brown about a $20 million raise when his extension goes into effect in the summer. Aaron Gordon, who basically pushed back his raise to help the team this year, gets a $9 million raise, and then basically you're already into second apron territory right there. So that's where it gets dicey. And I tend to think, maybe I'm wrong on this, but it's not like Cam Johnson's going to have terrible value as a potential trade asset, because he's still a 6'8", 40% three-point shooter who's going to be on an expiring deal at $21 million. So it's not like, oh man, this is a brutal contract load for another team to take on, and a player who's just a nothing for us,
I certainly don't think it's anything that the Nuggets would have to incentivize. I don't know how much value they would be able to get back in return, but if we're just completely hypothetically spitballing here, the Lakers are one of the teams with salary cap space. They're also one of the teams that, they will have interest in Peyton Watson.
100%.
If the Nuggets make it clear, hey, we want to keep Peyton Watson, and so we're not going to play ball with you there, but, would you be interested in Cam Johnson? I absolutely think Cam Johnson would make sense for a team like the Lakers for a couple reasons. One, like you said, the size, the shooting, they need shooting around Luke and all that. Two, any team that acquires him, he automatically becomes a human trade exception, basically. Seriously, it's like the Pistons didn't end up using this with Tobias Harris. They decided they didn't want to, make a massive change. But if the Pistons wanted to be aggressive before the deadline this year, Tobias Harris' expiring $26 million contract gave them a lot of flexibility to do so. And Cam Johnson, wherever he is next year, is going to have that type of contract.
It's a good point. The Peyton stuff, I'm interested to see how he'll look just coming off of his hamstring injury. I don't think it's as much of a long-term concern for the team as Gordon's, obviously, but it's an interesting thing to return from a soft tissue injury after you were really kind of at a career peak before, integrating himself back into whatever his role is in their offense, whether he gets opportunities with Jokic off the floor to handle it a little bit more. We'll see. There's a lot of interesting variables with Peyton that I think are kind of TBD, and the playoffs will be very informative as far as where things go with that. So it'll be interesting. Overall, before I let you go, just your 10,000-foot view on this Nuggets team's championship hopes. I assume it is similar to what everyone says would be if they're healthy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, do they look like a championship team right now? No. But there's never been a championship won in late February and early March. If this team is healthy, it is absolutely a threat to come out of the Western Conference. I think that. The Thunder think that. The Spurs think that. That's the conventional wisdom throughout the league. Unfortunately, it's a big if. And, healthy, if healthy, not just available, but if Joker is himself, it's obviously you start. Why are the Nuggets considered championship contenders? Because they have one of the best players of all time, and he has to play like one of the best players of all time to give them a chance. But then, we said it dozens of times already just in this conversation. Gordon is just so critical here. And so hopefully he can get back and stay back and be healthy. And, this nagging hamstring thing that's already bit him a few times in the last year doesn't bite again. But yeah, I think there are three teams that have a real deal chance to come out of the West. Obviously, the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Spurs have, they'd be skipping the line as far as experience goes, but they've also beaten the Thunder 4 out of 5 times this year. So I think it's those three, and then Minnesota might. If you're looking at a dark horse, we can throw the Timberwolves in there as well.
I think they belong. They're still, I believe in the infrastructure that they've built over the last couple of years. So, hey, look, the Nuggets have Tyus Jones now, so that changes everything too.
Good dude. You're gonna like Tyus. Good dude. I don't know how much tread left on the tires, but a great guy to have in the locker room for sure.
Yeah. No, he. It's kind of funny. They had their eyes on a different Dallas guy who they thought might maybe get bought out. Obviously, with Chris Middleton, didn't end up panning out there. They were interested in Kyle Anderson. They were kind of looking for more versatility at the forward spot, just kind of thinking about the injuries that they've dealt with there and trying to get through at least the rest of the regular season with a bit more, two-way defensive help with some of that. But Tyus Jones at least is kind of a low mistake, low turnover ball handler. So you have that with him, I guess. We'll see.
If you like assist to turnover ratio, Tyus Jones is your guy.
That is certainly true. It's kind of ridiculous, the numbers there. Anyway, Tim, thanks for doing this. I will see you in Oklahoma City next week.
Are you getting in the night before?
I'm not.
I tell you what. All right.
I know.
Post game.
Well, the game's 3 hours earlier this time. I think. Maybe not 3 hours, but
we got to look. Those. That
was
game. We'll stop at the Tipsy Tiki on the way back to the hotel.
That'll be the plan. I cannot believe everything that compounded for that game to be as late as possible out of the locker room, as late as possible out of the arena. Everything was just brutal. You have 30 different reviews in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
With a fight, you have overtime. It's was it on ESPN? Yeah, it was your stupid network and 20-minute commercial breaks.
That's why. Well, also the late tip.
Yeah.
I am optimistic that they'll be able to get this one in under 3 hours.
I think they will. I will see you there. Thanks for jumping on, Tim.
I appreciate it. Adios, amigos.
Looks like we have another dragon, Master Ace, spitting the burning passion. It's about to be a catastrophe. Thought I was the only survivor, but at last we meet. Like the food vegans don't eat. I know you can see the infernal blaze. We would probably burn the stage and leave it with third degrees. And inside of us is an eternal blaze, blazing eternally like a furnace. But it's so hot it's burning the furnace's frame. Your family and furniture isn't safe. Better evacuate, cause the skill we can calibrate reduces the chances of your survival if you ever try to retaliate. So dance to this recital so you can slowly gravitate towards us. Who needs a chorus when you're hotter than Earth's core is? No strings attached with no puppets, yo, we're cordless. I fly even when I'm hurt, yo, that's soaring. Your skill isn't apparent, it's an orphan. We proceed to spit the verse that takes your spirit and lifts it high into the earth's atmospheres. Don't come at my sphere of influence, you squares. I take a spear and put it through you, I raise the stakes. Medium rare, you're the least of the media's fears. Why he's the reason the media's scared. Please be prepared to be impaired. Go see repairs, defeating people in pairs. Jordan Jordans. I thought I needed pairs to be compared to the people in Paris.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Gather round hip-hoppers as if you're still living. Still got love for the game, I'm still giving and still driven. Like Diddy in the Maybach. I've been repping for the city since way back. All y'all rappers better stay back, cause you still can't find me, I'm a needle in a haystack. A rare breed sitting high up in the chariot. What y'all do is getting high up in the Marriott. Well, consider this your wake-up call. If you're married to the game, it's the breakup call. And you ain't wearing a crown if you're not tearing it down. You clowns get found right there in the ground. 6 feet, dirt nap, that's because your shit's weak. I'm a giant, you a pipsqueak. Welcome to my kingdom, yup, the throne has an occupant. Read my name at the bottom of the document. Check the scroll, giving good times like Esther Roll. Peace to Keith E, God bless the soul. Trying to get more checks to hold. On some slick Rick, Mr. T shit, big chest of gold. And the flow still extra cold, like the North Pole, cocaine snow, another lost soul. Bow down, it's the Grand Royal, yup. 20 plus years in the game, and still the fans loyal.